Welcome to Out Motorsports, the channel for cars as you are. My name is Jake, and this is the 2023 all-new Range Rover. This is the biggest Range Rover that Land Rover sells. They have turned Range Rover from just a single vehicle into a lineup of vehicles, but this is the Mac Daddy. This is the evolution of what was the original Range Rover several decades ago. Now, I have a very interesting relationship, in a good way, with Range Rover as a vehicle in that I owned a 2010 full-size L322 supercharged. It made 515 horsepower. It was shaped like a barn. It was tremendously fast and a little scary because of that speed, and I absolutely loved it. It was just the best vehicle. I had so much fun with it for a lot of reasons. We'll get into that in a second, but I got rid of that because it wouldn't tow my enclosed trailer as well as I needed it to. But in any case, I really loved it, and I am so excited to talk about this new Range Rover as a result. The L322, by comparison, was originally developed under BMW, built with Ford money, and then of course sold as a Land Rover product once they and Jaguar kind of went off on their own. But this is all Land Rover, this is all new, this is called the L460 platform, and let's talk all about what it is, what's powering it, what's underneath. We'll give you a full interior tour because it is all new, and most exciting, it can now seat up to 7 people if you get the long wheelbase model. And then of course we'll get it on the road and talk about how it is to drive. All right, so first of all, what is the 2023 Range Rover? Like I said, this is on an all-new chassis and platform. This is called the L460, and Land Rover is very proud that they have a couple different powertrains going on here. This is actually the most base model full-size Range Rover you can get. This is the SE long wheelbase, and this is powered by the corporate Jaguar Land Rover Ingenium 3-liter inline 6-cylinder. It's a really great motor. I have loved it in the Land Rover Defender. I've driven 2 Defenders with this motor. 3 liters, inline 6-cylinder. It is, get ready for it, turbocharged, supercharged, and uses a 48-volt mild hybrid system to collectively make 395 horsepower and 406 pound-feet of torque. Now that sounds complicated, it is complicated, but we'll talk about this during the driving portion. I really like this engine, how it makes power, and how it sounds and all that good stuff. Now, Land Rover is also offering a twin-turbo V8 that they have procured from BMW that you can get in these as well. And they're also offering this as a plug-in hybrid setup. Of course, this review is going to focus just on the inline 6 because that's what we're driving, but hopefully when those other 2 are made available, we can drive at least one, if not both of them. Now, this Ingenium 3-liter inline 6 gets paired exclusively to an 8-speed torque converter automatic and full-time 4-wheel drive. It's an all-wheel drive sort of setup as the Range Rovers have had for a long time now, but you do get 2-mode high and low range. So it is fully engaged all the time, running in 4-wheel drive, all-wheel drive if you will, and then it does have that low range that you can pick while you are driving if you want to go further off-road and need that gearing. Now, other noteworthy items as far as mechanicals on this 2023 Range Rover include 4-wheel air suspension, which has been kind of a staple of the brand for a long time, so you can raise it up and down for height. And then this also has adjustable dampers so they can get stiffer or softer based on your drive mode settings. The other interesting thing, and we'll show you as part of the drive portion, I'll see what I can do hanging a camera out the window, these all have standard 4-wheel steering, which is regardless of the wheelbase you pick, you get standard 4-wheel steering, which is pretty cool because these are big vehicles at this point. Even the short wheelbase is pretty big, and any help you can get as far as pulling a U-turn, getting around a tight parking spot, that sort of thing, always very appreciated. All right, so I mentioned this was the long wheelbase 2023 Range Rover, and honestly, it hides its length pretty well, I think. This is a big car. I'm not sure if you can tell on video, but this is large. Wheelbase wise, like I said, long wheelbase here, you have to get the long wheelbase to get the 7-seat option. And the long wheelbase 2023 Range Rover is a 126-inch wheelbase. The short wheelbase is going to be 118 inches. So for comparison, for maybe a more commonly known SUV, the Chevy Tahoe has a 126-inch wheelbase. We'll talk about what that means for the sake of third row seating and third row cargo space in just a second, but this is a long vehicle, and you do have a good amount of interior room. Now, what that means for the sake of towing, more wheelbase always means more stability, so my hope is to get one of these with a trailer hitch to test out the towing capabilities. This one does not have it equipped, unfortunately. That's a $750 separate option, which I kind of find strange given these are, even in their most basic trim, pretty well equipped, but this one doesn't have it. Now, if you get a 2023 Range Rover with the inline 6-cylinder like this one has, it is rated to tow 7,716 pounds. If you get the V8, it is rated for 8,200 pounds. So would really love to test out the towing capabilities because 8,200 pounds really puts you right in line with things like the Escalade, the Navigator, the Grand Wagoneer, other big 3-row luxury SUVs that this is competing with. And a lot of those owners, whether it's frequently or not, do want to be able to tow and tow well and safely with their big 3-row SUV. So mechanically, that's what's going on here. The interior, like I said, is new, so let's take a look at that and then we'll get it on the road and talk about how it is to drive. All right, so let's take an interior tour of this 2023 Range Rover. First of all, the first thing I noticed getting in is just how thick these seats are. Land Rover does a nice job. They just cover the entire base here in leather. These are really comfortable seats. I think they've been really nice to put some miles on. They are a million ways of adjustable. You've got an extendable thigh support right here, and then you can have adjustments here for different parts of the seat, whether it's the shoulders, the bolsters, the headrest will go up and down or in and out, so that's all pretty nice. Now let's hop in, because this is dinging incessantly. All right, so looking down here, you've got 3-position seat memory, which is really nice. You've got all your controls for your mirrors and windows, of course. The door handle is right here, which it took me a while to find. There's a couple things in this interior that are almost so minimalist that you can have a tough time figuring them out at first. Door handle's right here. That was one of them. The other one that I had a hard time finding at first was the hazard switch. It's right here. It's tucked away, kind of difficult to see. Hopefully you won't have to use that too much unless you want to just park in the middle of DC, as a lot of people do, and leave your car there for 4 hours. In any case, looking at the gauge cluster and the steering wheel, this is a new steering wheel for 2023. Same sort of deal where you can push these buttons and have different functionality come up using the same controls based on what you're doing. So they alternate between controlling your media and controlling what you have going on here in this center screen. This is a fully digital gauge cluster here, which you can change the layout of a little bit. I think it's totally nice, totally fine. And then looking over here, this will control your cruise control. Now over here, this is an updated screen. This is the newest version of Pivi Pro, and this is a curved LCD. If you can see it here, it does curve a little bit, which is kind of a nice touch. It is really big, but all the better for your CarPlay, I guess, if you want to have gigantic icons and maps and things, or you can go back to the Pivi Pro setup. This is really pretty. The nice part about this is that it will show navigation directions here if you're using Apple Maps. It'll show your media. You control all of it here, or you can go back to CarPlay. Now this screen is haptic, if you heard those clicks, so you can hover and touch, and then you actually have to push in, and you hear that click, and that is how you navigate everything. You can turn that part on and off depending on if you like that or not. I think it's a nice touch because you're not going to accidentally just tap something and have it change anything while you're driving. If you hit a bump or anything, you have to actually tap and push in. So kind of a nice touch. When you are using CarPlay or Android Auto, it doesn't support haptics. So you go in here and then to actually tap, you just touch. So not a big deal. Looking further down, you do have your climate control here. This particular Range Rover has quad zone climate control. So you've got these two up here for your front seats, and we'll show you two more in the second row for that. Typical Land Rover Jaguar control here at this point, which is kind of neat. This dial controls your temperature normally, but you can pull and you can adjust your fan speed, or you can push in and adjust your heated and ventilated seat. So that's kind of nice. They're a little slow to respond, and one friend remarked that he thought this was a touch screen, which I think it's kind of a learning curve, but they're very neat, very pretty, kind of a neat way to still have physical controls and not actually have as many buttons. The other nice thing I like here is the seat button. If you push that, it will call up on the top screen controls for all of your seats. So you've got heated and ventilated seats in the first row. The second row also has heated and ventilated. And then the third row is not raised, but it also is heated back there. Now, you also have massaging front row seats, which are very nice to have. One of the better massaging seat setups I've used, actually. And then you can go in here, I mentioned the adjustability. If you want to adjust the seats every which way, you have to do it through the screen. And then otherwise, you can set everything up as far as seat memory, as far as where you want things to be. There's this chauffeur control, so you can stow things, you can mess with the headrests, You can drop everything. You can control all of the folded or unfolded seats for second and third row. So pretty cool for the sake of controlling it all, whether you are, you know, chauffeuring someone around or just dealing with your family and you know, moving seats and folding up and down. Kind of cool that you can do all that. Okay, so let's talk about the second row. So first of all, either side of the 2023 Range Rover has these controls if you've got that third row. So this controls just moving the seats forward and back to get access to the third row, and then this will flip the seats up and down. So if you want to get in the back, you just push this, and it'll actually move both the second row and the first row seat forward so that everyone can get in. It's nice that it does this. You see this tips, so it makes it pretty easy to get back here. It does take a little bit, and of course you have to make sure no one is sitting in these seats, otherwise this will happen. Now you'll notice as we hop in here, this seat is pretty far forward compared to the other side. So I'll go ahead and shut the door. This is a huge door over here, but if you look, I have my own seat controls, so then I can slide this as far back as I would like, get all the leg room, I can recline it, I can bring it up, and I have 3-position memory for the back seat, which is really cool. Now, the other thing here, this car has all these different controls for your backseat passengers, so you can control your window, both windows, or the other side, which is really, really cool. This is a very clever thing as far as what you want to do for either dropping the windows or raising the power window shades. So these will go all the way up and down, but you can control both sides at once or just your own. These are for your reading lights, and then this button here controls your overhead sunshade as well. So really nice if you're being driven around and you want to control everything, and then this will mute your sound system. So really cool that they have this. I could see where maybe families wouldn't want these controls if you've got kids back here, but if you're chauffeuring adults around, this is really, really, really nice. Now, once I'm back here, of course, right now there's a ton of leg room, but this is irrelevant because that seat is unlatched. So how do you pull it back? Well, you've got these 2 arrows here. This guy will bring the seat back, and you hear that click, that is latched. Ooh, now it's coming back. This is its fully rearmost position. Now I'm 6'1". This is tight back here for me. The roof line, the seats are a little higher back here, and then I've got my knees kind of firmly embedded in the seat. Now this is a little tight for me, of course, but this seat is all the way back right now, so you can slide this forward. You'd have to have your second row passenger do it, but they can do that for you. As far as what else is going on down here, you do have heated seats in the third row, which is really nice. You've got a little air vent back here and a cup holder, and of course a few speakers for your sound system. So it's not a total penalty box. It's pretty nice. I think this will be fine for the sake of a lot of people. And if you get your passengers to move forward, it will be comfortable enough. We did put 7 full-size grown men in here, all of which are 5'9" or taller, and everyone was comfortable enough for a ride around town. So that was kind of nice. Now with this, let's go to the cargo area, because I mentioned this is kind of between the size of a Tahoe and a Suburban for the sake of space. So let's see how much space there is in the back with this third row open. Now, one nice thing about the 2023 Range Rover, they still kept the split folding tailgate. So love that. It is power operated at the top and at the bottom. It's a separate button right here, and that will open the tailgate up. Now, I mentioned this is with the third row extended. Not a ton of space. You see I've got my camera box right here, and this is against the back of the third row. And you see this is about the end of the space. This is where that flap comes up when the bottom tailgate is raised, and not a lot of space going on here. So if you need more space, you have to drop the third row seats. Now the nice thing is you do have all these controls back here. So these will control your third row, these will control your second row, and then you've also got this button right here that will drop everything at the same time. If you want to, you've got these buttons. A few other manufacturers have done this too with air suspension, where you can lower the rear of the car. Hear it dropping some air out there. It just lowers everything for a little bit easier loading if you're loading something heavy back here. So if you want to lower these, push the buttons, and it lowers everything. And again, if you can tell, it'll move the second row forward if it needs to for clearance, and then move it back just like that when it's all done. All right, now before we start driving this new Range Rover, I want you to listen for something, because I think there's a little thing going on here that gives this car so much personality. It's a little silly, but if you notice, the door handles on this car are power extending. They are retracted into the body when the doors are closed and the doors are locked. So when you start moving, this car is set up to lock itself as you put it in drive and start moving. you will hear the door handles retract in and the doors lock, and everything is so mechanical, and I just love the sound it makes. So take a listen. It's like these three distinct mechanical sounds that I just think are kind of the silliest little touch, but they really do it for me as far as giving this car a little extra personality. All right, so first of all, I mentioned I wanted to talk about why I didn't off-road with this Range Rover, just given these are full of great hardware that will make them very capable off-road. And the answer to that is that it just doesn't really give me the sense that it wants to go off-road very far, which is definitely a vibes thing. It is not a capability thing. Would this go far off-road? I think it would. It's got the air suspension that'll raise it up. It's got real hardware as far as a locking center diff, a locking rear diff, and it's got low range. So I would like to take it off-road, but this one is so big and it just doesn't really lend itself to doing that. So I decided to not take it off-road because I think most owners won't. Now, the benefit to having the air ride suspension that can go up and the locking diffs and all that is in bad weather. I think that's going to be where the majority of these owners actually end up using the all-wheel drive and the off-road capabilities. If you've got a lot of bad snow, heavy rain, anything like that where you need that all-weather traction, I think that is where all this will come into play, especially if you live somewhere with bad snow and big hills. I'm thinking of Pittsburgh because I was there a few months ago, but somewhere like that I think will come into play as far as all this hardware is actually making the vehicle more capable compared to something that doesn't have the locking diffs, and just less capability. So that is why I didn't off-road with this one in particular. It is also on highway tires, which are only going to go so far. And this is a big vehicle. I didn't really want to do anything that would really risk damaging Land Rover's expensive car. This is a fairly basic one, and this is $124,000 MSRP. So wanted to be careful with it. Now, I did mention this has four-wheel steering. Let's try a U-turn here. It is wild. That's within 2 lanes. Wild how easy it is to make a U-turn in this vehicle. This is a big car, and it feels bigger than the old ones were. If you've driven an L322, a P38, all the older Range Rovers that were just smaller, more compact, that's kind of where the Defender 110 sits now as far as size-wise in the lineup. But this is a large car, and the fact that you've got that four-wheel steering, it really helps. It makes it so maneuverable. Now, one really great thing about this car in a city environment in particular is the ride quality. The air suspension on here is great combined with those adaptive dampers. In a city environment with lousy roads, it does a really, really nice job. It is comfy on the highway too. We'll get it out there in just a second as we get on the on-ramp. But in the city in particular, it does just such a nice job at just soaking up bumps. And all of that is combined with a very quiet cabin. So you get a really nice, just serene environment, and it just is, the experience that Land Rover has curated with this car is so nicely done. Give it some acceleration here. Now, like I said, this is 395 horsepower, 406 pound-feet of torque. I'm sure you heard that a little bit. It is fairly muted as far as the sound this inline six makes. The nice thing is it sounds really good. It's kind of that ripping silk sort of deal when you lay into the throttle, but it's also pretty subdued. And the way it makes power is really nice. It just kind of swells and builds, and it's a really good fit for this Range Rover, despite not feeling like the fastest thing in the world. These are heavy cars, and I think the V8 is going to feel really quick. I think the plug-in hybrid will feel really quick. This doesn't feel really quick, but it's kind of a sneaky fast where it's building power and torque, and all the boost and everything is helping you. You can put your foot in it, and it loves being wound out to redline, which is just so nice. It just feels so good. Now, on the highway, when you get to higher speeds, that nice soft suspension that I really like in the city is still comfy here. It soaks up all those bumps. It feels really, really good. However, you notice that the vehicle is tuned to be softer versus stiffer. And it's not wallowy, But over bumps, there's definitely a lot of compression. The rebound is really good, so the body doesn't, pop back up. But on compression, when you go down on a bump, you just feel that it's kind of a soft and heavy car. So I'm curious how it would do with towing, because that's kind of what did in my L322. It was just a little too soft for a big trailer. The steering, I think, is weighted appropriately. It's got some nice heft to it. If you put the car in dynamic mode, the suspension does firm up a little bit. It still feels a little soft to me. The steering firms up a little bit. It doesn't feel out of character for the car, which I really like. So it's not like you're, trying to turn this into some super sporty vehicle. The mission is not to be sporty. So I like the fact that even in its stiffest, sportiest setting, it's not really that different. It's just a little more, ready for you and a little more turned up than it otherwise could be. It's been just a nice car to live with. Very quiet, very serene. All of your inputs are just appropriately weighted everywhere, which is to say, the brake pedal bite when you first push on the pedal. It doesn't throw you forward, but it's not too soft. It is a confidence-inspiring pedal. The throttle pedal is not super laggy. It feels pretty good, but it's all tuned for comfort and for serenity. And they do a really nice job of that. With all that, I think this is a lovely car. It has been a great car to live with for a week. I've enjoyed, doing everything that you would do with a big luxury SUV, which is to say, driving around, picking up your friends, going to nice dinners, having it valeted, like all that sort of stuff. This is a vibe. It is very, very nice, and it puts off a vibe that other expensive three-row luxury SUVs don't necessarily put off in the same way, and it stands out. That said, this interior and the exterior, all of it doesn't quite do it for me over the L322, and I know people shopping for this aren't shopping an L322. They're, those are old, cheap cars at this point. But the L322, I think, had a little bit more of a sense of occasion about it, in its grandeur and its just poshness, if you will. This is very restrained, very refined, very minimalist. It feels like they're trying to go very, very futuristic with what this car is and how it is styled and put together. It works. It's just not what I personally want out of a Range Rover, and it's not what drew me into the L322. The L322 drew me in with, the really rich cherry wood everywhere, and the piping on the seats, and the, just all the little things that were very extravagant in a mid to late 2000s kind of way. This is just a very different approach to the same ideal that is a Range Rover. All right, and that is it for this review of the long wheelbase 2023 Range Rover. Thank you so much for coming along. As always, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe right here on YouTube. Give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, and maybe Twitter if they're still around, at Out Motorsports. And if you'd like to join a community of LGBT automotive enthusiasts and motorsports competitors, head over to outmotorsports.com. We have a whole group over there with some in-person and online events, and we would love to have you join for any and all of that. Till next time, please stay safe, be well. We'll see you for the next one.